we're looking at a plant press that's come out of the dryer, and we're having a look to see the quality of the specimens. But the first thing I notice is that the press, which is quite nicely made, it's a bit smaller than... No, it's spot on. It's spot on our size, which is really good. But you see that there are two ways to put this press, with the slats going this way, or the slats going that way. Okay, that way, this way, on the outside. Now, you would think that it makes sense to have the straps on the press this way, because they fit nicely down there and they don't catch. Correct, but not correct in terms of the press, because what happens is when you tighten this press down in like this, you're pulling there and these are pulling away. As the more pressure you put down on this, the more pressure there is for this press to spring apart. So the good trick is that when you have, and the straps are fantastic, great tie downs you've used. So the best thing is that when you have the press that is like this and not just a flat board of masonite, it's to have the straps tied down like this, and that way it pushes all of the joints together when you're putting it under pressure or strain. Okay, so let's have a look. Oh, Northern Territory herbarium. Okay, that's actually, they use these a lot in the Northern Territory herbarium, where they actually have a lattice of aluminium through the sandwich between cardboards. And the reason they do that is to, as the hot air is going through, it picks up the heat and really dries those things, which in the tropics can be an issue. Actually, if you use the system that I've shown you, that I used in Japan and Taiwan, that we demonstrated here and is on the web, and that Ruth has done such a nice job of doing a version of that, where you have the funnel and straps so the air can only go through the corrugates, then you don't need the metal. Okay, first specimen, you can see, you know what family it is, don't you? No? Okay. You can see that it's a herbaceous perennial anyway, and the base of the plant's there with roots, and there's looks like there's fertile material, although you have to have a closer look to make sure that the fertile bits haven't fallen out. There's nice leaf material, it's well pressed, it's still a bit dirty, so the trick there is to hold the specimen like here, so to protect the fertile bits, and to sometimes even a needle if from your dissecting kit is good for removing the soil. And by holding it upstream, I'm protecting the branch from the vibrations, so that soil can be got rid of. And no, I'm not going to clean all your specimens for you. So that looks like a good specimen, but we need to make sure that in these inflorescences there are actually the fertile bits, not just the sterile bits. And I'm not going to try and do that now. So there's more of the same, and that's good, because it means that if one is fertile and one's sterile, you've still got some fertile material. It also means you've got a bit of material to play with for identification, so that's really smart. And more. And it looks like there's going to be some fertile material here, even if some of those were sterile. So you might say a bit over the top, too much material, but no, you almost never say too much material. Okay, so this is obviously a woody plant, a shrub, more likely than a tree. In fact, I know it is. You can see that most of the leaves are pressed very nicely. Some of them down the bottom are folded over on themselves, but they're sort of tough, and so if the majority are handled well, then one can bear that, and it's sometimes hard to separate those open. The problem I see there is, where's the fertile material? I can see some fruits here. Oh, look, and if you look carefully, can I have a second opinion? How many sides are those fruits splitting on? One or two?
Two.
Yeah. So straight away there's one carpel splitting up, dry, dehiscent, splitting on two sides, and so you should already be thinking of what fruit type, everyone? Come on, I'm not pulling your leg.
Legume.
Oh,
That was lame.
it was lame, but it gets called dad jokes at home, I'm afraid. So there you go. There is fertile material there, but no flowers, but then that's not surprising given the fruits are so old. There may or may not be seeds, but even that is a reasonable... having the fruits brings it up to well beyond acceptable if everything else is good. You know, if the label information is good, if the specimen is well presented, then you can't, with all species, expect to get flowers and fruits at the same time. This group of legumes, they'll flower en masse and then they'll fruit later. And so if you're later, you're not going to find flowers. But here, look, just to prove me wrong, those fruits are actually from last year's. And some of the fruits there, you see, oh look, some of the fruits have fallen off, and those fruits can be put in a cellophane bag and then in an envelope, and in the cellophane bag a little piece of paper cut neatly with name and collector's name and number. You can at least see here young inflorescences. So we're actually too early. I thought we were too late, but we're too early for the flowers by the look of it, unless we've got a surprise on the next sheet. So no, we haven't. But that at least we had the fact that we've got the young inflorescences at least gives us some idea of the way in which the flowers are arranged. So that's a lot better than not. Okay, we have a climber, twiner here, and you have to be quite careful with this, that you're actually pressing them so that they'll look half decent on the specimen. You can see that that they've been pressed immediately because these trifoliate leaves are really nicely spread out. They're all flat. There are characters in there that you want to see. If this wasn't pressed well, you wouldn't see those features. The flowers, it's very tricky pressing these, but that's a reasonable job. And there are fruits here. And the fruits, there are two genera that I see very commonly in this area. You can see that the fruits here, looking remarkably similar to the last specimen, maybe there's something in that. You can see the fruits here are in fact straight-sided, okay? And there's another genus which has a different fruit type where one side is straight but the other side is like this. And there's a special term for that sort of legume that's called a lamentum, where even though it's a pod, it breaks into those segments. And that's very characteristic of a genus, but not this genus. So this genus, if I saw it just in flower, this specimen, I'd be going, damn, I have to work much harder to work out whether it's in this genus or that. I'm not going to say what they are because he's got to do that work. And so this, having fruits and flowers, makes for a really good specimen. Now the base of the plant isn't there, which is not ideal. But as a sort of it's sort of okay. I mean, you have this trade-off then with plants like that, where you dig up the woody base, and you're killing the plant. Although it is quite common, so it probably would have been it would have been a superior specimen if the base had been collected as well. And sometimes that's characteristic. That genus in the Northern Territory will do weird things, and the plant has, after it will have two sorts of, it will have some fruits that are actually born underground, or at least planted by the plant, that are drawn underground, and it's quite distinctive, but that doesn't do that around here. Okay, here's a classic case where just sort of get away with having that all on one sheet. If you had more material, collecting material, then I would have separated this out and done that on one sheet and this on another, because already we've lost this leaf. That doesn't matter so much because this leaf was already chewed. What's more important is that some of these other leaves, like this leaf, these leaves, are intact, so we can see that the leaf apex is quite rounded rather than pointy. And that's actually an important feature. Now, I don't know if we'll come across fruits for this specimen, but certainly there are well-developed buds. Now, in this group, do we all know what this is? Is there anyone that couldn't put a genus on this, but just by looking at that? Genus?
By the looks of it, to me, I'd say you.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not looking closely enough. Okay. Yeah, that's what it is. And with these, the fact that it's not in flower doesn't worry me at all, because the buds are well enough developed that I can see the inflorescence arrangement. I can count the number of flowers per inflorescence unit. I can see the complexity of the inflorescence, all of which are really important in identifying this genus. What we don't have here is fruiting material, unless we have it on the next specimen, or separately in a bag. And no, and that's okay as it is, but it's much superior. It's much superior with some fruit. No fruit. Okay, that looks like wonderful material of this. Am I giving away anything? I don't think so. Of this fern, you can see the sori over some of the leaves that straight away tell me that it's fertile material. That's also going to aid identification. We can see the base of the plant. Now, you can say if everyone went out digging up the ferns like this, we'd be diminishing populations left, right and centre. But the reality is that most people aren't going out collecting this. We're the unusual, exceptional people in the world. And although there are some plants, and they tend to be on protected lists, where they're very popular. So things like flannel flowers are on a protected list because people like them, and so they're prone to chopping them off and sticking them in vases. I still suspect that a lot of people do that. But here, the point is, the base of the plant, it's much better to make a beautiful specimen or specimens like this with the base of the plant, with fertile material, than to muck around and go, oh, I don't want to damage the environment, and just take a leaf, sterile or fertile, that doesn't tell you anything and that just makes for a crap herbarium specimen. So that's excellent. Whoops.
And
Was.
you still made us throw that cricket away.
Cricket?
The cricket.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's slightly different. I have only seen... we're having quite some discussions with one PhD student and my co-supervisor and I are having discussions about, at what point is it vandalism to collect specimens when you only know of somewhere between 9 and 12 plants of the species in the world, and they're all in one population, and some of them have died. Well, there are some really serious issues about, what what's appropriate collecting under that circumstance. Oh, yes, lovely, same again. Now the only issue here, fortunately, you see, that works by itself. This leaf, you're at danger, that's going to not, that wasn't pressed well. So with something like that, you would have been much better off putting that on a separate piece of paper, angling it like this. Or, if you wanted to include it, I don't think you need to, all of that material is sufficient, then I would have thought about actually bending that over. So you zig. Okay? That's lovely. Rhizome, fertile leaves. Because at this stage, I wouldn't want to see a whole lot of ferns. That's all right, same collection. Where is the no collecting tags? You really need to have collecting tags on them. And if, for example, you've gone out and you've forgotten the collecting tags, you should at least be writing collector's name and number on here. But it's not as safe as the collector's tag. Okay, this is a bit more of the same, but you'll just use the two pieces of paper to hold that in. Okay, I will wrap this up in just a few seconds. Okay, tricky because the base of this, getting the whole plant out, it's fertile material. I like the bends that are discrete like this. I don't like the curvy bits like that. Okay, so and if you could find of these plants, several plants, you might find a growth, a shoot, where you can actually dig down, cut off the shoot without killing the whole plant. So the lack of the base of the plant is not ideal with that, even though the plant is very interesting and it's fertile and it adds diversity to the collection. And maybe we'll find that. Okay, so yes, this sort of curling around, I'd much rather see you go bend, bend, bend. Even if it breaks at that point a bit, okay, it's much better because it shows what the form is. Okay. Not usually, because the climbers are doing that as part of their... So if they're doing that, then having a bit of that curve around, it's a very good question, is sort of reasonable. What you don't want to do, even with the climber, is go, and I've seen people do this, go and create some sort of weird specimen. Okay. And there have been cases where people have described the morphology because, so a botanist comes along and is describing plants only from the collections that are available to them. Some people have described artifacts of pressing as being typical of that species because they haven't seen the plant in the field, they've only seen the herbarium specimens. Okay, thanks a lot. You're welcome to leave your microscopes out. If you turn them off and cover them and leave them where they are, that's fine.
Thanks, Ray.
Pleasure.